Welcome back. In this video, we're going to continue looking at JavaScript to kind of learn the fundamentals and foundational concepts of programming using JavaScript. So if you haven't already, the first video has set up this setup using a notepad or a text editor. I'm using Notepad++ and a web browser. You can use your console to debug here. That was right-clicking and going to inspect. You should be able to find a console. If you have any errors, they'll pop up here. So in this lesson, we'll be looking at creating variables as well as concatenating strings together. And we'll also look at a few basic math operations. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create something called a variable. There are a few different ways you can create variables in JavaScript, but for this lesson, we will be using the var command. So as you can see in my Notepad++, it actually bolds and changes colors, so you know that that is a reserved word in JavaScript. And what this does is this says whatever word follows, it will be the name of the variable. So I can call it something like name. And you could be done there. You could say var name. And basically what this does is says reserve some spot in memory. And instead of having to remember some long name of a memory location, we'll just call it name. So it's basically like a link to a spot in memory that you can change it and you can make it a number, or you can make it a true or false value, or you can make it a string. So for us, we can make it a string. So if you want, you can assign a value here. So if I say name, I can use an assignment operator. So if you're taking a praxis or a GACE, you might see an arrow pointing to the left saying assign it. But in JavaScript, as well as many languages, you use the single equal sign to assign a value. And this does something very specific. It takes whatever's on the right-hand side and stores it to whatever's on the left-hand side. So if I want to put something in a name, name will go on the left, and then I can put my name on the right. So the first line right here creates that spot in memory, saying link to that spot. It's called name. And then if I want to change it, I can say change it to something or assign a value. So currently there's nothing in here. We'll get into the difference between empty and null later. But if I want to assign a value to it, I use an assignment operator, and then I can put anything I want on the right. If I wanted to, I could also do this all in one step. So if I wanted to put my age in, I could say, I could say var age, so var age. And I could say equals, and I could put my age in. So I could say something like 29, which is not my true age. So this does it all in one step. This says create a variable called age, and then at the same time, take 29 and then store it back into whatever on the left. So now you have two places in memory. One we're calling name and one we're calling age. Again, you don't have to remember the long hexadecimal memory location. You can just say name and it now is linked to that. Same thing with age. In JavaScript, you can actually flip-flop between them. So you can say it's a variable. So if you wanted to then make age a string or you wanted to make name a number, you could do that. I wouldn't recommend it, but it is allowed in JavaScript. So we can do a couple of things with this. So the first thing we can do is you can obviously change these things whenever you want. So we'll get into using math in a second, but you can add, 1 to this every year on the birthday, say just +1. Also, you can take strings and you can mix them together. And adding and mixing strings together actually use the same symbol, which is the plus sign. So the plus sign could be addition if there's two numbers, or it could be concatenation, which means to combine two strings. So in our alert here, we have hello world. So maybe instead of saying hello world, we want it to say hello and then the user's name. So I'm going to delete world here. So it'll say hello, and then I have my comma and my space. Anything in these quotation marks are considered to be string literals. So literally anything you put inside a quote, it'll happen. So if you put a space in here, then it will print the space. If you don't, it won't. So if you don't want to mush together, you would put a space in here. So if I want to attach a string to this, I would use a plus sign in JavaScript. And again, this is the symbol for concatenation. So it is basically, you can think of it as adding a string to another string, but it just combines them to one big string. So now I can say, where do I have my name stored? And I have it stored in a variable called name. So hello in quotes plus, and then you have name. So if you save this and you refresh this, Now your pop-up says hello, and then I had that space in there because I put it in here. And then I have the name, which in this case was Kevin. So if you wanted to maybe be really excited and put an exclamation point after there, you can put another plus sign, and you can concatenate a string that has just the exclamation point in there. So whenever you go from string to variable, back to a string or to another variable, you will always need the concatenation symbol. The spaces before and after the plus sign, those don't matter. You can leave them in, you can take them out. I just like to do it because it spaces them out. So now if I save this and I refresh it, now it says hello Kevin with the exclamation point at the end. So that is concatenation. Maybe we want to also alert the user to say how old they'll be in, say, 10 years. You could easily do that using alert. So I'm going to use another alert. Again, you're not going to see alerts very often, but it's an easy way to start interacting with the user in JavaScript. So when you do, if you do use JavaScript for web design, you'll probably use a text field, and you'll probably print it somewhere on the page. And some other languages, you might use a console just to print things to the screen. So it's just kind of to learn the basic concepts. So here, maybe I want to say, Kevin, in 10 years, your age will be. So I can, again, use that variable I have, so name. And then if I don't want it smushed together, I put a space in here. And I can say, in 10 years, you will be. And then I can say, quote, and then I can put a plus sign. This is still on the same line, but since it's not wide enough, it'll just wrap to the next line. So if you notice, it still is on line 6. And then if I said their age, this will say 29. And then if I say plus 10, what we hope is that this will say 39. But if I run this, if I save this and refresh it, it will say, hello, Kevin. And then it will say, in 10 years, should have been years, you will be 2,910. I hope that's not true. So what's happening here is you are concatenating. So this works like we read from left to right. So you have a variable and then you have a plus sign, which makes this a concatenation symbol. So if you have a string on either side of the plus sign, it is concatenation. So now this becomes one big string. So now it becomes Kevin, in 10 years you will be, and then it has a plus sign. So it's coming from this string right here. So since the thing on the left is a string, it will concatenate this age. Even though it's a number, it will just basically make it part of the thing in quotes. So now that will be Kevin, in 10 years, you'll be 29. And then once you say plus again, that will say, okay, well, the thing on the left now is a big string. Now concatenate 10. So if you remember back to elementary school math, you might remember PEMDAS. So parentheses, exponents, multiply and divide from left to right, and then add and subtract from left to right. So it's actually multiply, divide is one command, and add and subtract is one. It just works from left to right. So if I want to not do that first, what I can do is I can make something happen first by using my parentheses. So if I add parentheses around age plus 10, make sure you have enough closing parentheses. So if I open one and open another one, make sure you close 2. If I do this now, before it concatenates anything, it'll go here and combine these using a plus sign. So since this is a number and this is a number, it will add those together. And when I save that, you will see it will say, hello, Kevin, and say, Kevin, in 10 years, you will be 39. So now we have the correct number. So the order of operations works as you would expect it to. We can also do basic math. And the precedence of the concatenation symbol is the same as the add subtract. So if you wanted to say something similar to this, like alert, we'll say, in dog years, you are, and then we can concatenate this, so we can say, make sure you close the quotes, and we do a plus sign, and we can say age times 7. So I didn't use any parentheses here, but you'll notice if I save this and I refresh it, it will say, in dog years, you are 203. So that is actually the correct answer. And the reason why is because in PEMDAS, we do multiply and divide before we look at the addition symbol, which is the same for concatenation. So you can put parentheses around this, but if you're not adding or subtracting, you don't need it. Also, if you're subtracting, you'll see you won't need it either because it knows that you can't subtract from concatenation. So I would always put parentheses around that, but you might get away with not doing that. So that is how you set up a variable, how you can concatenate a variable, how you can do some basic math. So you can use your plus sign, you can use your multiplication sign. You can also do, obviously, divide, and you can also do subtraction. There's one other one which gives you the remainder. So this is the modulus. And the symbol you're going to use for the modulus is the percent sign. So it kind of looks like a division sign. So you could say something like alert, let's say, the remainder of, let's say, 12 divided by 5. We'll say 12 divided by 5 is, and then we can concatenate 12 modulo 5. And what this does is this divides by 5, which you know will give you 2, and the remainder will be 2. So it goes in twice, which is 10, and then there's 2 left over. So this right here will give you the remainder of the 2. So if I refresh this over here and go through my other ones, you will now see that the remainder of 12 divided by 5 is 2. So that will give you what is left over. If you were to say something like, let's go 2 divided by 5, in this case, if you try to do 2 divided by 5, it doesn't go in at all evenly. And so what do you have left over? You have left over just the 2. So if the first number is ever smaller, you'll always just get that very first number. And we can see that in this third one, the remainder of this is 2. So you can use this, and we'll see some examples of where that is useful. So in the next video, we will continue on learning about some other things, and we will get to logic and loops as well. I'll see you in the next video.